The mysterious figure. Jessalyn. He scared me. That black fur and those red glowing eyes. The height and the stocky build his wolf head was frightening as well. As I watched him disappear on the other side, a sigh of relief escaped my lips. He scared you, huh? Mason asked me. I sighed and nodded my head. I never seen him like this before. I told him, "It'll get better." Lincoln told her. Then he turned to the guy next to me. "Father, should we go with him? Make sure he's not doing anything destructive," he said. The guy moved from in front of me. Then he extended his hand to me. "Grant," he told me. "Jessalyn," I told him. "What are we going to do about him?" Aiden asked. "Nothing," Kane said. "And don't treat him like he's not part of this family. He's still our child, and he's still your brother." "I'm not like him," Aiden defended. "I would never leave his side, even if he's pissed off at me for existing." "Same for you, Kieran and Adonis," Kane said. "Bro, that's not an option," Kieran told him. Then he looked at Adonis. "Am I right?" "Alias knows I'm on his side," Adonis said. "I would never disown him because of him becoming a wolf." "There's another thing," Grant said. "Alias needs a pack. I'll call Tangus so." He stopped. "Oh shit." He took his phone out and turned to us. "Lucas went to my cousin before Alias was bitten." Mason explained. "You need to contact them," Kane told him. Mason dialed a number and then he waited for them to answer. "Fuck," he said in a low tone as he pulled the phone away from his ear. "Come on, answer the phone." "What's wrong?" I asked, getting nervous. "Fuck," Mason shouted. "Tank's not answering." "Son, calm down. I know your cousin is able to take care of himself. He's in the Blue Moon Mafia for a reason. Lincoln, go with Alias," Mason instructed. "I need to contact Tank." Mason walked off while Lincoln rushed off to Alias. "Adonis and Aiden, go with him," Kane told the other two. Adonis and Aiden ran after Lincoln. I stayed by Kane, Naomi, Carla, and Kieran, but my eyes were glued to the blood on the grass where Alias' scraps were. Just thinking about how he was able to eat himself didn't sit right with me. He has to do this every time. I asked Grant. "Yes." Grant told me, if he wants to turn back to his human self, he has to eat his own remains. I looked where Alias had ran off to. "Can we hang here until our son gets back?" Naomi asked Grant. "Of course." Grant nodded. I think I'm just going to head back home." I told them. "I'm getting tired. I'll have Mason take you, okay?" Grant told me, "It's okay, I'll just lift." "No, my son will take you." I nodded, accepting his proposal. Mason came back and sighed. Still no answer. He told us, "Something's wrong. I haven't heard from him in 2 weeks. Take her home. I'll try to contact him while you're away." "All right." Mason nodded. Then he looked at me. "Are you ready?" "Yes." I told him. "Be safe. You too." Kane told us as Mason and I walked off. We walked over to Alias' car, and the both of us got in. "I'm worried about him," I told Mason. "Should I be?" "He'll be fine," Mason told me as he drove me back to the house. My father would continue to teach him how to control his wolf. He'll be good. Do you think he'll be able to grasp that? I'm sure he will. It'll take time, though. Mason had brought me to the house and parked the car into the driveway. "Thanks," I told him before I got out the car. "Looks like everybody is sleeping," he said. "Tell Sasha that Lincoln will be back later on. I'll let her know. One last thing. If Alias comes back to the house, stay away from him. I squinted my eyes at him. Why? I asked. I don't think you can handle him in that wolf state. I chuckled. I know how to handle my husband. I told him. But thank you for advice. Mason nodded before he drove back out of the driveway and left to go back to the others. I stood there, thinking about Alias for a good moment. Then, I turned and walked to the house. I opened the door and looked at the dark house. I thought Sasha would be up, but the house was silent. Sighing, I closed the door behind me and headed towards the stairs. I was tired, of course. However, the noise downstairs startled me. I sat up on the bed and looked around. I glanced on the side of me and saw that Alias was still not there. My eyes shifted to the clock on my phone, and it had read 3:40 a.m. I sighed as I got out of the bed and walked over to the door. As soon as I stepped foot outside the room, I got this real thick aura in the house. Sasha. I called her name, but she didn't answer. When I got to the room she was sleeping in, the door was open and nobody was in there. Damn it. I thought to myself she could have at least told me she was going to be leaving me. Hello, I said. After a few hellos, I realized the house was completely empty. Well, at least I thought I was alone. When I got to the stairs, I heard this low growl. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. However, when I got to the stairs and stepped down one step, my foot stopped dead in its tracks. There was somebody there, and those crimson glowing eyes were staring at me for the longest time. My mind was telling me to run away, but my feet could not move. I did what someone should do, and it took a step back up. When I moved, the figure moved forward, walking slowly towards me. Missing that last step behind me, I tried, falling backwards. As I leaned up on my arms, trying to get back up, I felt a pair of hands, slowly filling me up. I watched as the figure slowly made its way up to my waist to where those big, strong arms were able to wrap around me, holding me close. Please, wait, I begged in a shaky breath. They ignored my plea. The figure rose, hovering over me, and just as I was going to say something else, the figure pressed their lips against mine. Just that deep, satisfying kiss was enough for me to realize who it was. I pulled away and stared up at the man I had fallen in love with. Alias. I said his name, clothes shopping. Jessalyn, what do you think? I asked Sasha as I showed her the outfit I was going to wear that day. Huh, she sighed. Are you going there to shop or to fuck? I turned to her before I looked at the outfit. I didn't get what she was talking about. The outfit was a cute red skirt set. I just want to look good. I told her. You don't have to lie when I seen Lincoln after his wolf transformation. We were fucking every night. That's how our kids came along. I smiled at her and turned back around. Are you guys going to try again? Sasha asked me. Try what? I asked her. A baby. I shrugged my shoulders. I turned to the clock behind me and sighed when I saw that the time was now 4 p.m. He's getting off of work now. I told her. I'm going to be late. Hop in the shower and get ready, she said as she got off the bed and walked out the room. I rushed to the bathroom and got undressed. Then I got in the shower as fast as I could. I washed up with a different body wash that day. It was a raspberry mist flavored, and I wanted to see if he liked it. Once I was nice and clean, I got out and wrapped the towel around my body. Then I began putting on my hygiene products. I checked myself out in the mirror, and I heard the front door open and close. Baby. Alias shouted from downstairs. I'm up here. I shouted. I heard his footsteps and I smiled in the mirror when I saw him, standing at the door and watching me. I turned around and smiled at him. His eyes left mine as he scanned my whole attire. You're making me nervous, I told him. Why? He asked me. Because you're staring at me. He smirked and shut the door behind him and locked it before he walked over to where I was. I'm sorry I didn't think it was a problem to lust for my future wife. The way he said that. His voice had changed. It was a lot deeper, and my God, was it so sexy to hear him talk to me the way he did. Alias, I just took a shower so we can go shopping, I told him. Huh. He looked down at me in silence. I sighed. Damn it, I thought to myself. I wasn't trying to wet the bed that time. I backed up from him and was forced to sit on the bed. He walked over to me, ready to unbutton his clothes. Alias, can we leave? I asked him. Afterwards. I was still sore from our last night's business. Baby, please. I begged him. Let's just go shopping first, and then we can do something once we come back. Before he could even start on his shirt, his phone went off. He sighed and took his phone out of his pocket. When he answered it, a sigh escaped his lips. Yeah. He answered it. He backed up and I got off the bed, fixing my skirt and watching him. Tonight, he asked them. I sighed as I waited for him to tell me what's going on. I'll be bringing someone, Alias said. A knock came on the door, and I walked out the room to go answer it. As soon as I got to the stairs, Sasha had already opened it and Mason and Lincoln walked in. Alias. Mason shouted my fiancé's name. I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned to Alias, who was now standing beside me. Yeah. Alias answered. There's a gathering tonight at a wolf's gathering, and we want you to go. Lincoln said. Tonight. Alias asked. Yes. Mason said. There are a lot of wolves that go there. Lucas, Pack don't go, so you're clear go there and we can find some recruits. And what happens at these things? Fights, drinking, partying, fucking. I mean, fun shit, dude. Are you in? I looked at Alias. We had plans, but I also know how important it was to get that pack together. Have you heard from your cousin? Alias asked them. Not at all. Lincoln said. If we don't hear from him in a few weeks, then we're going down there. Alias nodded. Then he turned to me. I'm going to go with them. He told me. I knew it. I sighed and nodded my head at him. Okay. I told him. We're going to go shopping, though. Alias said. I smiled and nodded. I'll see you guys in a few. Alias told them. All right. Mason and Lincoln sat on the couch and hung out with Sasha. I walked downstairs and waited for Alias to finish whatever he was doing. Once he came down the stairs, he grabbed his keys from the table and turned to me. Let's do this, he told me. I walked towards the door, and he opened it for me. The both of us walked out of the house. I sat in the fitting room, watching Alias try on suits. I wish I didn't, though. He was beginning to agitate me. The way he looked so good in those goddamn suits. Especially in those silver suits. My mind was going so fucking crazy, watching him. A part of me wanted him to force me against the wall and slam into me, making me scream his name, all throughout the damn store. What you think? Alias asked me as he turned around, buttoning up the black shirt that came with that silver suit. Ugh. I shouted. He lifted his head up at me, giving a confused look. What's wrong? What happened when you worked with your family? He raised an eyebrow at me. Nothing. Alias, why do I feel like you're lying to me? He smirked at me and shook his head. I'm not lying. Why are you asking me that? I already know women were hitting on him. Ugh, it's fucking Alias. Why did he have to look so fucking good? He folded his arms over his chest and smiled hard. Are you jealous? He asked me. I closed my eyes and got up from the chair, leaning against the wall. Of course I am. But why? Because it's you. What does that mean? I shook my head at him and he laughed. Jess. I looked up at him and rolled my eyes. He moved closer, pressing his body against mine. Baby. He called me. I turned my eyes up to his and sighed. You don't realize how much of a difference you have now that your wolf has surfaced. I told him. I don't even care, to be honest. Well, I do. He squinted his eyes at me, ready to say something, but we were interrupted by one of the store employees. Do you have anything you want me to take up to the front, sir? The male employee asked. Yeah. Alias backed up and grabbed the suits he was going to purchase that day. Can you bring me more, please? He asked him. Of course. Alias opened the door and handed the suits to the guy before shutting the door again. Then he turned back to me. I don't have an interest in fucking anybody else. Jessalyn, you fucked someone before Alias. We weren't together. I was starting to have feelings. Alias and I just stared at each other for a moment. Then I turned my eyes to something else. Look, I haven't messed with anyone else since we had our shit intact. We're about to get married soon and... Yeah, when is that? I feel like every time we try to get married, something always happens. And then, it's never brought up again. Alias squinted his eyes at me. You think I don't want you? That's how I feel. A knock came on the door, and Alias sighed, before he opened the door to retrieve the suits from the guy. Once he grabbed everything, he placed the suits on the door handle, then looked back at me. Again, my eyes traveled down to that throbbing cock of his. I bit my lip, and he caught that immediately. What you want to do, Jess? The way he looked at me with those different colored pupils excited me. He was so ducking gorgeous, and I was sure he wanted to do something in that fucking fitting room. He moved closer to me, and he placed his hand on the side of me. I don't know. I told him. Come on, baby. I know you want something. He leaned down and kissed me. I wanted him right then and there. As we kissed, his hand caressed my backside before he pulled me into his arms. My legs wrapped around him, and my arms snaked around his neck, holding onto him. Right now? I asked him. Yes. I pressed my lips to his, and as soon as I kissed his lip, I smiled. I want to just feel you right now. Is that okay? He smirked at me, and he gave me what I wanted. The Gathering Part 1. Alias. I was nervous as fuck. The gathering was crowded with wolves, and I wasn't sure how I was going to find pack members through this. Mason walked over to me and sighed. Okay, so I want to let you know something. Mason said, once you walk in there, your vampire scent is going to overpower your wolf. It's still new. Fuck. I sighed. I'm not ready for that. My heart was pounding hard as I scanned the perimeter of the area. You got this? Lincoln told me. Do I? I asked them. They're going to fucking kill me out here. Show them that you're not afraid of them. Sasha responded. Remember, you are part of their family. Yeah, right. They're going to fucking disown me like the vampire community did. See, that's the thing. Mason smiled. What they did is different from what wolves would do. It's clear that your vampire community Fear what you are capable of. As of the wolf community, we love power. Nobody weak is ever allowed to show their faces around us. You, showing your face around them, shows that you have strength and ability. Something we look for. The reason I had you come here is because I want you to show them that you will be joining the family. Will they accept me? Show them what you got and they will. Mason turned and walked with Lincoln and Sasha. I sighed before I grabbed Jessalyn's hand and followed them into the place. It was part of the woods that was marked off. There were lights hung up and there were many wolves there, talking and having a fun time. There were drinks and food there as well. There was even a bonfire in the middle of the place. We're going to go over here with the other women, Sasha said to me as she grabbed Jessalyn's hand. Be safe, Mason told them. Sasha nodded. Then she turned and walked off with Jessalyn, Lincoln, Mason, and I walked farther into the woods. That's when I realized the attention from the wolves. You sense it? Lincoln asked me. Yes, I told him. Let's grab a drink, Mason suggested. The three of us walked over to the ice cooler, ready to grab 3 beers until a male with a blonde long beard blocked us off. He wasn't focused on Mason and Lincoln. His glowing brown eyes stared into mine for the longest. I sense a fanger in you, he told me. You're not allowed to be here, boy. Are you lost or something? He wasn't the only one. There were more wolves surrounding us as well. I sense it too, a female said beside the man. Why is that? She walked closer to me, sniffing me out. Her glowing eyes lifted up to mine, and we stared at each other for a second. When my eyes glowed back into hers, she gasped, backing up from me. What are you? She asked me. Well, I'm not just Fanger, I told her. The others growled around me. Mason put his arm on my shoulder, staring at the other wolves. He is different, he told them. Let him prove himself to you guys tonight, Roland. But he's a Fanger, Roland said. Not just a Fanger, Lincoln told them. And yet he carries the scent of one, Roland said. All I ask is for you guys to give him time to prove himself, Mason said. Roland didn't say anything else, but the way he stared back at me with a glare let me know that he didn't trust me one lick. The others backed off, but they had their eyes on me the whole time. Roland stood there for a minute before he moved out of the way, letting the 3 of us to the cooler. He's going to have to do a lot to gain my trust. Roland spat before he walked off. I looked around and I could just sense everybody's uneasy feeling towards me. It was as if they were trying to make sure I failed or something. There was no hope at that gathering for me. I turned around to look and see if the girls were okay. I saw Jessalyn and Sasha on the other side, laughing and hanging out with the other women. I'm going to check on the girls, okay? Lincoln told us. That's fine, I told him. Lincoln walked off, leaving me with Mason. Mason was quiet, looking around the area. I smiled as I opened the canned beer up. So, how long have you and Sasha been fucking around? I asked him. Mason looked at me and I smirked at him. Fuck you, he told me. Dude, stop, I replied. You and her seem closer than you and your brother. Mason took a sip of his beer and sighed. She was my first girlfriend, Mason admitted. Wow, really? I asked him. Mason chuckled. However, Lincoln told me that he had imprinted on her the day after Sasha and I slept together. Whoa, how did you cope? Mason downed his beer and tossed the can into the garbage can beside him. I wanted to rip his fucking throat from body, however. I couldn't. Lincoln was the only family I really had, so I did what I had to do. You gave her up. I had to. My eyes shifted to Jessalyn and my heart stopped immediately. I finished my drink as I continued to start at Jessalyn and this guy who was talking to her. Mason saw what I was looking at and shook his head. Focus on the conversation, he told me. To be honest, I didn't want to. There was no telling what he was saying to her. Listen to it. Taking a deep breath, I concentrated on conversation between Jessalyn and the unfamiliar male she was with. Guy, are you alone? Jessalyn, no. My boyfriend is over there with his friends. Guy, man, he's very lucky. You are stunning to look at. Jessalyn, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. Guy, does he tell you that every day? Jessalyn, tell me what? Guy, how beautiful you are. Jessalyn shook her head. That angered me. Why the hell was she telling him that for? He didn't need to know anything. Jessalyn, I haven't heard it come from his mouth yet. Guy, well, I would tell you that every day. Women need to hear how beautiful they are to their significant other. When the guy caressed the side of her face, that's when I had to step in. Mason, and I went over there and Jessalyn looked at me with worried look on her face. Alias, stop. She said my name. Too late. The moment I saw his hand raised to caress her again, I intercepted his hand. When he looked at me, we both glared at each other. Alias, baby. Jessalyn sighed. We were just talking. I don't give a damn. I told her. Maybe it was a mistake leaving you by yourself. Alias. Sasha said my name, calmly. She's fine. Mason tapped me on the shoulder and leaned closer to me. No fighting. Mason whispered. This is a sacred place for the wolves. Damn, Mason knew that dude had my fucking blood boiling. The way he caressed my wife's face pissed me off. Lincoln joined us a second later with 3 cups in his hand. Where'd you go? Mason asked me. To grab the drinks for the sacred bonding ceremony. Lincoln said as he handed Mason and I our cups. Sacred bonding ceremony. I asked. Mason smirked at me. It's a mating ritual with your significant other. Mason explained. You take her and you fuck in front of the wolves. Once that bite is implanted in her, she's marked as your mate, they will see her, and what he did will be prohibited in the wolf community. Will I kill her? I asked Mason in a low tone. Mason shook her head. Just mark her. He told me. Don't add your venom to it, it's not hard at all. I turned back to Jessalyn, then I turned to the guy next to her. Too bad, I thought to myself. I was in the mood to fight. Instead, I grabbed Jessalyn's hand and led her away from everyone. Alias, we were just talking. Jessalyn said. I released her hand and chuckled. That's funny, because from what I heard, he was flirting with you. Okay, a few compliments is not flirting. I swear, if a woman was talking to me right now, you would blow a fuse. If she's touching you, then yes, I would. Huh. I nodded before I looked the other way. Are you going to drink that? She asked me, pointing to the cup in my hand. Yeah, I am. I told her. I need to find some wolves to join my pack. I also need them to know that you are off limits. She smiled at me. Baby, you need to trust me, she said. I just don't trust the males here. When I said that, I looked around us. Jessalyn was fucking eye candy that night. None of the males could keep their eyes off her, except for Lincoln and Mason. That's because they already knew she belonged to me. I took a seat on the log behind me and sighed. Jessalyn moved closer to me and sighed. What? I asked her. Nothing. Jess, what is it? She shook her head at me, and I shook my head at her. Is it the bonding thing? I asked her. She nodded. Are you nervous about it? More scared. I have never done anything like that before. Me either. Sasha walked over to us and smiled. Can you talk to your friend? I asked her. About what? Sasha asked. About the bond. Basically, the claiming of her wolf mate. Mason chuckled. It's not funny. Jessalyn rolled her eyes. I got up and pulled her close to me. Hey, I said to her. She lifted her head up at me, and it gave her a small smile. I'm nervous as well. My wolf has to surface a little bit, so you can meet face to face. We need to make sure your wolf is okay with her. Lincoln said. I know. I sighed, then turned to Mason. Did you tell them about the words they'll be reciting? Sasha asked Mason. I squinted my eyes at her, very confused. No, but I will. Mason told her. What words? I asked him. Words that you say to your mate before you begin to bond with her. I looked at Jessalyn with a raised eyebrow before I turned back to Mason. How does it go? I asked him. Come with me. Mason smiled. He turned and walked off with me, following his trail. Before or after the drink? I asked him. After. Mason said. Now, remember, you're just biting her a simple pierce of the fangs. What if? We stopped as we got farther away from the others. What if I do want my venom inside of her? Mason's eyes widened. You're thinking about turning, Jess? He asked me. I didn't say anything. Well, I mean, you can. But I mean, does she know? I shook my head. Dude, you need to tell her if you're planning on making her immortal. I put my left hand in my pocket while holding the cup in my right as I looked around. How the hell was I supposed to bring that up to her? Not only was I running out of time, but I wasn't even sure she would agree to it. I mean, I never asked. As I was in a deep thought, the sound of a howl came from where the others were. Mason turned to me and I looked at him. What are you going to do? He asked me. Whatever you decide, you need to make that the final decision. I nodded. I think, yeah, I'm going to turn her. Hopefully she'll agree to it. Tank. Alias. We made it to the house, and of course, my family was there. My father looked pissed as I pulled up to the driveway. I parked the car and turned to Jessalyn. She was paler than usual. Baby, come on. I groaned. Adonis knocked on the door, and I opened it, getting out. What did you do? He asked me. Alias. Father called my name. I closed my door, keeping my eyes on Adonis. He glared at me with anger, which didn't bother me at all. I don't think you want to do this. I told him. Alias, where's Jessalyn? Mia asked me. What did you do with her? Mason, Lincoln, and Tank came over. Adonis looked over at Tank with a confused look on his face. Who is this? He asked me. Tank. Tank introduced himself. Huh. Aiden said. Alias, what's going on? Father asked me. You changed since you got that new companion of yours. What companion? Tank asked. He has the wolf in him. Mason told him. I turned to Tank, who just looked at me with a raised eyebrow. I don't sense it at all. Tank told us. It's not dominant. Lincoln added. His vampire is. Huh. Tank said. Alias. Adonis shouted my name. My eyes shifted back to Adonis. When we stared at each other, he just shook his head at me. He's right. I did change. And soon, Jessalyn was too. She was to be my Luna, and we were going to be the first hybrid family of Las Vegas. We need to talk. Tank told me. Help me get her out of the car. I told him. Then we can talk. Tank and I walked to the passenger side of my car, and I opened the door. Jessalyn still hadn't moved since the gathering. I picked her up in my arms and pulled her from the car. Tank closed the door and followed me to the front door of my house. My family followed me as well. We have a lot to talk about, Alias. Father said. No, we didn't, I thought to myself. I knew what I was doing and I knew what I wanted. She wanted it as well. That's why she agreed to it. Mason, grab my keys, I said. Mason grabbed my keys from my pocket and unlocked the front door. Then, he opened the door for me and I walked in first. I laid Jessalyn down on the bed and stared at her. She was still pale, so I knew it was going to take a minute. I placed a kiss on her lips before I leaned back up. She'll be fine, Mason told me. Will she? I asked him. Remember, she was immortal. Lincoln reminded me. It takes time. I know, I'm just nervous. You should feel guilty, Aiden told me. I looked up at him and smirked. No, not at all guilty. I told him in Adonis. Adonis shook his head. What will happen if she dies? He asked me. You'll feel guilty then. Saying the wrong thing, Adonis. Mason said. She'll survive. We'll see. We all stood there, staring down at Jessalyn. In my head, I was hoping for her to wake up. I wanted her to wake up so Adonis and Aiden would shut their fucking mouths. They were getting on my nerves. Father walked in and sighed. Let's talk, he said to me. I rolled my eyes and followed him. As we walked out of my room, I could hear Mia crying downstairs. My mother was with her, comforting her. Do you feel good about what you did? Father asked me as he leaned on the rail of the stairs. I know you're not questioning me. I sighed. Alias, there's a lot of shit that I never questioned you about, but this one here you went too far. Did I? I mean, didn't you do the same thing? I had a reason to. Did you? Father and I stared at each other. Alias. Mia called my name. Will my friend be okay? I looked at her and nodded before I turned and walked back to the room. So, you're mad because you think he made a stupid decision? Tank asked him. How stupid do you think it was, Adonis? I swear, ever since you fucking wolves came into the picture, things have been fucked up. Aiden shouted. I walked in and stood next to Tank. Ignore them. I told Tank. Let's talk. Tank, Mason, Lincoln, and I walked out of the room, leaving the two angry vampires to soak by themselves. We all walked downstairs and into the kitchen. We took our seats at the table, and I waited for Tank to tell me what he wanted to talk about. So, we waited for you guys. Where were you? Something happened, Mason said. Lincoln's mate got a visit from Lucas. Why? He wanted to see if we were over there, I guess. Lincoln said. We were in Los Angeles when we got the call, so we had to turn around. Why did you come here? I asked Tank. We were still going to come to see you guys. Tank leaned back in his seat and sighed. I'm not a part of the Blue Moons, anymore, he finally announced. That caught us all off guard. Wait, why not? I asked. Some things happened and Liam and I got into it. He explained. We fought and he accepted me back, but I had to leave again due to Nina. Wait, the mortal Nina? Mason asked. She's not immortal, anymore. Tank told me. Who turned her? Mason asked. Tank didn't say anything at first. His silence was what gave me the answer. You did. I answered. Wait, you turned Liam's mate. Mason asked. How the hell did that happen? Complicated story. Anyways, while you guys stood me and them up, we got hit. Lucas and some of his pack members blew up the house. We separated, and Mina and I are at her house, trying to figure out what to do next. We don't know where Liam and the others are. We haven't been able to contact them, but we need to handle that fucking Lucas situation and fast. However, I need your help. You were in my plan as well, Alias. And what plan is that? I asked as I got up and walked to the refrigerator. I pulled out a cold blood container and shut the door behind me. I need to find a pack, Tank said. Where do I come in at? I'm looking for the same thing. I grabbed a cup from the cabinet above my head and placed it on the counter as well. I poured me a bloody drink, then lifted the cup to my lips, chugging the beverage. Man, I needed that since the gathering. What if we formed one together? Tank asked. We both can lead. We can both be the alphas of the pack. What do you say? I put everything back where they originally went to before I messed with them. Then, I walked back to the table. I heard everything Tank said, and I turned to Mason and Lincoln. Would you guys join? I asked them. Of course, Mason said. It's better than being in Lucas' pack. Yeah, I would, Lincoln said. No weak members, Tank said. Of course. I looked up and I could see Aiden and Adonis staring at me. Joining forces with Tank wasn't a bad idea at all, but we were dealing with a man with thousands backing him. If we wanted this to work, we were going to need more. Fine, but we need more, I told him. We can find more, Tank said. Sasha walked into the kitchen with Lincoln's 2 kids. They wanted you, she said. That's fine, Lincoln said. Lincoln held his kids on his lap, holding close. They look just like you, Tank said. Thanks, but I see more FO their mother in them than me, Lincoln said. Do you have kids? One, a girl. Tank has a kid. Mason asked. Who would have thought? Tank chuckled. Your girl will wake up. Tank turned to me. While she's in her deep slumber, you can do some work. So, when she wakes up, she'll wake up to a pack. That'll be great and all, but why don't you change it up? My father asked as he walked over to us. So, you're talking to me now? I folded my arms over my chest. Just take my advice. Don't need it. Well, you're going to hear it anyway. Father sat across from me and I sighed. Adonis and Aiden walked over to the table as well. Why don't you mix your pack? He asked me. Remember, you're not just a wolf. You're a vampire as well. You'll have both strengths to fight side to side with. No, I told him. That's not a bad idea, though, Tank said. I rolled my eyes and shook my head. I'm not feeling that at all. I told them. What do you want, then? Tank asked. I don't know, I just want a pack as powerful as them. Just like he has thousands of pack members, we can do the same. But they can't be weak, Mason said. I know. The kitchen area got quiet for a second. Then Tank knocked on the table and got up. What's your name? Tank asked Sasha. Sasha? Sasha introduced herself. Can you watch her upstairs? She won't attack me, will she? Mia walked into the kitchen and glared at me. She's not ready to awaken yet. Just make sure she's okay. Okay. Sasha agreed. Tank tapped me on the shoulder. Let's go out, he suggested. To where? I asked as I got up out of my seat. Tank smiled. Let's start low, Tank said. I know a place. Okay, I said. Lincoln got up, putting the kids down as well. Sasha grabbed them and pulled them to her. Let's go. I said as I walked out of the kitchen. We're going to. Adonis said. The hell you are. I told him. Sorry, cousin. Adonis said as he cut in front of me. Just like Uncle said, you need to mix your pack. Where are you going? Mia asked Adonis. I'll be back. Adonis told her. Adonis and Aiden walked out the door first, and I smacked my lips before I followed behind them. I hope they didn't get on my bad side that night, because I was ready to fight any one of them. Palm Springs. Alias. Where are we? I asked Tink. We ended up out of Los Angeles and over to an unknown area I had no knowledge of. Tank, Mason, Lincoln, Adonis, Aiden, and I stood outside of a bar in Palm Springs, California. No wonder it took long to get there. Let's start here. Tank told me. What is this place? I asked him. The only co-ed place that vampires and wolves actually exist around each other without the needs to fight. Mason said, This is basically a party city for us. You've been here. Tank asked. No, but I've wanted to. Mason replied. Let's go then. Lincoln said. The 6 of us walked to the front gate, and a guard stopped us. He looked at us for a minute, then he held out a handheld metal detector. One by one, he scanned all of us. When we cleared, it was time for us to head inside. We walked in, and the music we heard outside engulfed us immediately. The LED fixtures kept changing from green, blue, pink, and purple, lighting up the crowd. The vendors were selling hand lights to individuals as well. That was basically a full-ass party, and I wasn't going to lie. I was loving every bit of it. Holy fuck. I shouted over the music. This is fucking insane. Hell yeah it is. Adonis shouted. We all stood there, looking all around at the thousands of people who filled that place up. On the outside, the club looked small, but inside just fucking wow. I was truly amazed. I could not help but nod my head. The energy is amazing. Aiden shouted. I kept scanning the crowd, but was bumped into hard from behind. I turned my head and my eyes were met by 2 glowing red orbs that walked past me. It was something about him, but my hand stuck out to him randomly. When he took it, I pulled him close and a growl escaped my lips. I think you should reconsider who you bump into a mean mug from now on. I shouted. I released him and he stood there, staring back at me. I sensed something from you. The guy shouted. Both the wolf and the drainer together. How is that possible? I smirked at him. Just know I survived and I'm trying to build a pack. I shouted. The guy nodded. Mason and the others stood beside me and the guy nodded. You're mixing tribes. Something like that. You never see that. What do I need to do? That's when Tank stepped forward. Let's go talk somewhere. He shouted to the guy. We can discuss that over drinks. The guy looked around and walked off. We followed him and he led us over to an empty booth in the back of the club. Dude, this fucking club is so amazing. Aiden shouted. Who is the owner? We all took our seats and the guy before us chuckled. Well, I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. The guy said, My wife and I started it a year ago. So, this is your club? Tank asked. Yes. The guy answered. That's crazy. Adonis laughed. You actually got both to coexist in this fucking place. How did that happen? It's not hard to get wolves and vampires to be in the same room together. You guys are doing it now. The guy folded his hands and leaned on the table. His eyes shifted to mine. What I want to know is, how did you become a hybrid? A waitress came over to the table. What can I get you guys? She asked us. Drinks. The guy asked us. I nodded as I was going to need one. I enjoyed the environment, the atmosphere of the place. It was definitely my kind of thing. Once Jessalyn woke up, I would love to bring her here. I want to see how much fun she could have at the place. Surprise us. Lincoln told him. The guy turned back to the waitress and ordered the drinks for us. While he was talking away, I turned my attention back to the crowd. People were dancing solo and with others. There were girls dancing on girls, men dancing with their friends. It was something I loved to see. What's your name? Tank asked. I turned back to the guy, waiting for him to answer. Nith. The guy shouted. Nice meeting you. I shouted. My name is Alias Van Black. Nith shouted my name. We know who you are. Wait. I questioned. Nith pointed to the crowd, and when I looked over in that area, everybody in the crowd was staring at me. I smiled and turned back to Nith. So, is this a setup? No. Nith chuckled. You're basically a legend here. People found out about your fight with Lucas and the Blood Moon Pack. Dude, you were the talk of the town. A woman walked over as Nith spoke. She sat on his lap and turned to him, pressing her lips to his. Then she turned to me, her hazel brown eyes staring at me. Baby, who is this? She asked her husband. Nith smiled and shrugged. You guys, this is my wife Lydia. Nith introduced us. Babe, this is Alias Van Black, the bachelor vampire of Las Vegas. She asked him, not a bachelor anymore. I told them, I have a fiancé. Found her right. I laughed and nodded. What brings you to the Big Palm Springs? Lydia asked. We came to have a good time. Tank answered. Plus, we need to find members for the pack. Well, our club is the most place where lone wolves and vampires hang out. You should come more often if you plan on making your own pack. I nodded. I think I am going to. I told her. This place has a great atmosphere. Well, let's talk. Nith changed the subject. Let me hear what you got for this new pack of yours. I leaned forward on the table, and we began to discuss business. When I got to the part about Lucas, Nith stopped me in my tracks. Are you trying to keep this pack, temporarily or for a lifetime? He asked me. Lifetime? Tank told him. We just need to take him down before we can promise or pack anything. Understand? Nith nodded his head. Then he turned to his wife. What do you think? Lydia looked at me and the others. Before that, do you have a Luna? Lydia asked me. The waitress came with our drinks and passed them off before she walked off. I grabbed my alcoholic blood beverage and took a nice, long drag from it. Once I put my cup down, I turned back to Lydia. I do. I nodded. We both do. Tank added. So, you'll both be the alphas of the pack. Nith asked me. I nodded, and he didn't say anything else. I take it you want to be an alpha as well. Tank said. No shit. I do. Nith stared at us. This club could be a way to bring the funds in. It wasn't a bad idea, I thought to myself, but when I turned to Tank, he didn't look fazed at all. I was going to ask him, but I didn't need to. Somehow I was able to hear his words in my head. Something is off, don't agree to anything. Surprise. Sasha. How is she? Natalie asked as soon as she walked into Alias' house. We don't know. I told her as I came downstairs from putting Lincoln and his kids to bed. Please tell me you're staying. We could use extra hands. No, we don't. Mia huffed. Natalie rolled her eyes at Mia, who was sitting on the couch, playing on her phone. Yeah, I'll stay. Natalie told me. Good, I said. I didn't get why Mia didn't like her. Natalie was very sweet. Natalie closed the door behind her and locked it. Are you guys hungry? She asked. Not eating your food. Mia said as she got up and stretched. I'd rather go home and eat, anyways. Okay, what the hell? Natalie asked her. I've done nothing to you. Mia raised her eyebrow at Natalie, and I tried to change the subject to something else, but it wasn't happening. You know what? Mia asked her. I find you fake. Fake. Natalie asked her. How am I fake? Why are you even hanging out with my girl? You're Alias ex. Don't you find it fucking awkward? That's like her hanging out with Aiden after her and him broke it off. That's what you're mad about. Because I'm Alias ex. Get the hell over it. Why do you even care? I'm not fucking your man. Mia walked closer to Natalie, and that's when I had to step in. There was no fighting at the house. We were supposed to be watching over Jessalyn. I sighed and shook my hands at them. I understand you guys are beefing, but now is not the time. I told them. Jessalyn is our man focus, and that's what should be coming out of her mouths right now. She started it, Natalie said, and I'm ready to finish it. I told her, you better stay away from Alias. He belongs to Jessalyn. I don't want him. You sure? It sounded like you just said you're not fucking my man, which makes it seem like you two are still messing around. You knew what the fuck I meant. No, bitch, I didn't. So, explain because I don't speak ho. Oh my God. I shouted. That's enough. Mia and Natalie glared at each other, but they stopped talking. My goodness. I sighed. Now, I don't know what time the men are coming home, but we made a promise that we would watch her. Mia shook her head. I can't believe Alias did that to her. Mia rolled her eyes. He's so fucking selfish, and I hate him. Why? Sasha asked. Maybe he wanted her to join him. That doesn't make him selfish at all. She's just being negative because she's jealous, Natalie said, raising an eyebrow at Mia. You're mad your boyfriend isn't a hybrid. Out of frustration, Mia shoved Natalie back. I turned to Mia with anger. Stop it, Mia. I shouted. She needs to leave. Mia shouted back. Nobody wants her here. Until she is told that she can stay. This is not your fucking house. You're right. This isn't my house, hell. It's not any of ours. It's Alias' house. And I'm sure he told you and your idiotic boyfriend before. But he doesn't want you guys at his house, since you guys fucked on his damn couch. Natalie glared at Mia and tried to charge at her, but of course, I grabbed her and held her back. Let me go, Sasha. Natalie shouted with rage. Yeah, let her go. Mia said as she grabbed her jacket and walked to the door. Where are you going? I asked her. I'm going the fuck home. Mia snapped. Why are you mad at me? I'm not, but what I'm not about to do is sit in this big-ass house with a bitch that I can't stand. I released Natalie from my hold, and I saw her rush to the kitchen. A retching sound was heard in Mia, and I walked into the kitchen. Natalie was throwing up everything in the sink. Once she got better, she wiped the side of her mouth and turned to us. I ate too much. She told us, I don't care. Mia told her. Mia, stop. I said, I'm asking you, nicely. We're supposed to be here. If she wakes up and shiz that you're not there, then she'll be on. Mia chuckled and shook her head at me. When she wakes up, Mia asked, I'm sorry, but did you forget who bit her? Her fucking fiancé did. The fucking only hybrid in Las Vegas. Mia shook her head and walked back to the front door. She's never going to wake up, and you guys know it, Mia said. Before she could even step out the front door, a loud thud was heard from the top floor. The three of us rushed to the stairs, staying close to one another. What the hell was that? Mia asked. I shook my head. Something was upstairs, and it scared us completely. The three of us were not going to go check what that noise came from. Someone call Alias. I said in a low tone. Natalie took her phone out, and of course, Mia had something to say about it. Why do you have his number still? She questioned her. I never went through it to remove it. Natalie told her as she held the phone up to her ear. Alias. Hello. Alias. It's Natalie. Wait, don't. Mia and I looked at her, and she shook her head. He hung upon me, she said. He's smart. Mia huffed. Ugh, I'll call my husband, I said. I grabbed my phone from my pocket, ready to dial his number when another thud. The floor creaked above us, and I was beginning to worry. Jessalyn was up there, and I was too scared to check on her. Hell, all three of us were. I dialed Lincoln's number immediately and placed the phone to my ear, breathing hard. We slowly walked to the hallway and made our way to the closest bathroom, which was the first door to the right. We rushed in, and I shut the door behind us, locking it quickly. The creaking on the floorboards above kept squeaking. I sat on the edge of the tub and continued trying my husband's cell. He had finally picked up, and I sighed with relief. Baby, I shouted. Hello. Lincoln shouted. His background was undeniable loud. It sounded like he was at a club. I kept wondering what they were doing there, but I was going to yell at him later. Sasha, what's wrong? Lincoln asked me. My love, talk to me. I sighed and nodded, remembering why I called him in the first place. We keep hearing stuff upstairs. I told him. What stuff? I don't know how of. A soft knock came on the door. Mia, Natalie, and I paused and stopped talking. Then the doorknob twisted and turned. Sasha. Lincoln shouted my name. However, I didn't say anything back. My eyes were fixated on that damn door. Mia walked to the door and placed her ear against it. Who is it? Her voice quivered and shook. She was terrified like the rest of us. Sasha. Lincoln shouted. It's just me. We all heard that familiar voice. Mia unlocked the door and opened it. When the door opened up wide, my eyes widened and I clutched the phone tightly to my ear. Babe, Tabado-e, coming back now. Lincoln shouted. Good, because Alias is going to want to see this. I told him and hung the phone. Jessalyn awakens. Alias. I stared at Nith for the longest time. How can this club be our source of income? I asked him, how much do you make a night? $2,000 a night. Nith laughed, tapping the table with his pinky ring. Lydia had got off his lap and went back to the party. Let's just say I have more to bring to the table besides the club. I raised my eyebrow at him, and he got up from the table. I finally got some new inventory. That caught Tang's attention. He sat up in his seat, leaning on the table as well. Let's see this new inventory of yours. Tang smirked. Nith smiled and got up from the booth. "Follow me," he shouted and walked off. Adonis, Aiden, Tank, Mason, Lincoln, and I looked at one another before we got up from the booth to follow him. He took us to the back of the club, where there was less music and there was nothing but guards. It was clear that he had something back there. Tank took a sniff and a low growl escaped his lips. "What's wrong?" I asked him. "I'll tell you when we leave." He whispered. "Remember, don't take the deal he'd try to offer us. Tell him we'll think about it." I nodded. We got to this elevator and Nith pressed a code in before the double doors opened up. We all walked in and the doors closed, taking us further down from the main club. "What in the hell do you have down here?" I asked him. "You'll see." He smiled. The elevator came to a stop and the doors opened up, revealing a dimmed walk-through and doors that were closed. They had windows for us to see in. I found a way to let my wolves and vampires enjoy their night at the club. Nith told me. We got to the first room, and of course, it had to be drugs. He had men and women bagging it up for him and placing them in small bowls. "You sell drugs here?" I asked him. "What people would call happy pills." Nith admitted. "So, you sell these to the partiers?" Tank asked him. I could see he was not happy at all. He had that angry look on his face. That's actually good business." Tank told him. "What you think, Alias?" "It seems legit. You want to?" I stopped talking when I heard and felt my phone going off in my pocket. Reaching into my pocket, I retrieved my phone and took it out, looking at the screen. What the fuck? I questioned, then I turned to Nith. "I'm going to walk ahead." "Go ahead," Nith told me. I walked off, leaving the others behind. While I was walking, I answered the phone. "What?" I asked Natalie. "Alias." "What the hell do you want, Natalie? Why are you calling my phone?" "Hello." "Alias, it's Natalie." "Don't call my damn phone again, matter of fact. Delete my number." "Wait, don't." I hung up the phone and put it back in my pocket before I walked back to the others. "You need to tell your bitch to delete my number," I said to Aiden. "What are you talking about?" Aiden asked me. I glared at him for a quick second, then I turned back to Nith. "Okay, so we bring you in the pack and the club brings in some of the profit?" Adonis asked. "Yes, we can share the profit," Nith said. "However, I want to be an alpha as well. See, that's what I am, CONC." Another phone call came in, and that time it wasn't mine. The call belonged to Lincoln. Lincoln grabbed his phone and placed it to his ear. "Hello." He answered. "Dude, take that somewhere else." Mason told his brother. Lincoln walked away, but I could hear some of his conversation. Nith and Tank were still talking about the club and the finances from it. "Sasha." Lincoln shouted her name fast. We all turned to Lincoln as he rushed back over to us. "We have to leave," he told me. "Why?" I asked him. "What's wrong?" "I don't know, something is up at the house. We have to go now." Lincoln walked off, and I sighed before I turned to Nith. "Is it okay if we talk to you tomorrow about what we discussed?" I asked him. "Of course," Nith told me. "Just call me and let me know when you're about to come over, okay? I have a meeting early in the morning." Nith pulled a card from his pocket and tried to hand it to me, but Tank took it instead. "Will do," he said before he walked off with the others behind him. "Serious one, isn't he?" Nith asked me. I nodded and looked back at Tank. Something bothered him, and I was going to find out what. We left the club, and I sighed before I turned to Tank. What's going on? I asked him. What's wrong with him? Everything, Tank said. I'll tell you when we get to your house. Rolling my eyes, I turned to Lincoln, who was ahead of us. What the hell was going on with them tonight? I wasn't sure at all. Are you going to tell me what is going on? I asked him. Sasha told me that they needed us back to the house. Lincoln told me. She said that it's something you needed to see. May. I asked him. Yes, that's all she said before she hung up. We got to our cars and nodded. Tank sighed before he turned to me. I'll call you while we're driving. Tank told me. What's your number? I gave him my number before he rushed off to his car. The rest of us headed to ours as well. I got in my vehicle and started it up, waiting for the others to leave before me. When we were ready to leave, I followed behind them and my phone rang. I grabbed my phone and answered it. Tell me, I told him. That drug, Tank sighed. That doesn't belong to him. I kind of figured that who does it belong to. It's Blue Moon's product. I squinted my eyes while driving. How the hell did he get their product? How? I asked him. A while ago, Blue Moon was a very powerful and rich pack. We were strong and the drugs was what we were using to gain wealth. We let our friend guard it for some pay. Okay. Well, our friend was murdered. The garage that our product was in was stolen. All we found was a burned-down building and a burned corpse in it. Lucas did that. Yeah, he did. Him and his daughter has been causing us problems since I heamed her up in the bathroom. Well, I have to find Liam and the others. I need to let them know what's going on and that you and I found the product. What about tomorrow? Come on, Alias. I'm not working with him. I knew something was up when he asked to be an alpha to a pack that's not even happening at all. And since he has the product, that means he is working WTH Lucas. Lucas was in charge of those drugs. Now that Nith has them, it's clear he's giving some of his share to Lucas. We can't work with him at all. Then, what you want to do? We'll figure it out at your house, but my girl is calling, so we will talk later. I hung up the phone and drove the rest of the way in silence. 5 hours later, I pulled into my driveway and I put the car in park. Sighing, I had stepped out of the car. Then I closed the door and locked it. Mason, Lincoln, Adonis, Aiden, and Tank walked over to me. Then we headed to the front door. I took my keys out, ready to unlock the front door. However, the door opened before we could unlock it, and Sasha stood there, frowning. I put my keys back in my pocket, waiting for her to say something. Where were you guys? She asked as she moved out of our way. It was a 5-hour drive. I told her as we all walked into the house. Babe, calm down. Lincoln said. I turned and saw Natalie and Mia sitting on the couch. My eyes shifted to Natalie and I shook my head. Don't call my phone again. I told her. Alias, I needed to tell you something. Natalie defended. I'm here, so what the fuck is up? I asked her. I looked at Sasha, who turned to the top of the stairs with a smirk on her face. When my eyes lifted up to the stairs, my eyes stared up at the silent figure that stood there, touching the rail with the tip of her finger. Mason walked over to the light switch by the bottom steps and turned it on. That was fast. Tank told me. Is that her? Mason asked. Yes, that's. Jessalyn, I whispered. Her eyes shifted to mine. Question. Did you give her some of you when you bit her? Mason asked. No. I told him as I continued staring up at my fiancé. Was I supposed to? Lincoln said. Yeah, you were. Has she eaten? Mason asked. No, she won't eat, Natalie informed us. Okay, once she takes blood from you, you will need to hunt with her. Tank told me. Hunt where? I asked him. Go back to her father's house. Lincoln said. Hell, we'll even go with you matter of fact. We'll head over there now. Sasha, grab the kids and let's go. Mason instructed. Mia and Natalie, come with us. Jessalyn took a step down. Tank tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned to him. Remember, she needs to taste you. Let her gain memory of you, too. Together, once she's done, take a run with her. Don't drive, let her experience her new abilities. Tank walked back, then turned and left the house with the others. Now, it was just Jessalyn and I. She stopped on the middle steps, and I was able to get a better visual of her. She was done perfectly. Her figure was a lot thicker than before. What I loved about Jessalyn was her natural beauty. She didn't need any makeup at all, especially now that she was changed. I could sense her wolf in her and her vampire side. But what was more shocking to me was her wolf's voice in my head already. I missed you. I was coming back, I promise. I told her. I couldn't stop staring at her. She looked exotic, with her long raven hair in a stylish braid that was now longer and thick down her back. Her beautiful hazel eyes that were once regular now had a glowing halo around them. If she so wished it, they could have sucked you right in, which I believe she wanted them to do to me. I could not take my eyes off her for a second. She continued walking down the steps, and I backed away, as if I was trying to give the most room in the house. My eyes lowered to her lips. They were so full, so plump, one could only wish to feel them against theirs. And my God, those freckles that adorned her face gave her that indescribable innocent look. Just seeing her woke my wolf up completely. And I swear, he felt the same way I was feeling. Can you hear him? She asked me. Hear who? I asked her. I backed up until I got to the couch, keeping my eyes on her. When I turned to look behind me, Jessalyn was already in front of me. Her hands caressed my lower jaw, and her index finger moved down my neck. You need my blood. I asked her. I took my long finger and placed it on my wrist, ready to slice it for her. However, she had something else in mind. Jessalyn jumped on me, forcing me down onto the couch. My arms wrapped around her waist, and my eyes were glued to hers. She pushed my neck to the side, and she ran her tongue on it, causing my breath to hitch. Drink, Jess. I told her. I felt all four of her fangs pierce through my skin. My head went back as a stinging and pleasurable sensation rushed through me. I could just hear gulp as my blood slid down her throat. In that exact moment, intimate moments began to flood into my mind. It was what we did and what more I wanted to with her. Hell, I wanted her at that time and moment. My hands moved to her waist, keeping her there. I enjoyed the feeling of her drinking from me. Hell, I loved the stinging part of it. She had me wanting to moan to her instantly. Cut her off. Fuck. I moaned out loud. I can't, it feels so fucking good. She'll kill us if you don't cut her off, now. Jess, I whispered, lustfully. Baby, stop. She wouldn't. Jessalyn continued to drink from me. Jess. She ignored me. When I tried to move her off me, she wrapped her arms around my neck, keeping a hold on me. Just stop, I said. She was ignoring me completely. At that point, she was going to fucking drain me. Bring me in. Breathing heavy, I nodded, accepting the wolf's request. Immediately, I could feel the wolf stirring in me. The wolf mingled with my soul, making ours connect as one, but to where he was the main voice. I was only able to see and hear what he was saying. I couldn't speak anything else. Settling back, I let him deal with Jessalyn. Daciana stop. He said a name I've never heard before. If you continue, he'll die and we both know we need him. To my surprise, Jessalyn finally stopped. She lifted her head off my neck and turned to face me. Echo! She called him. So that was my wolf's name, huh? She got off him and Echo stood up, staring down at her. Now we must hunt together. Echo said, "Can we take over? I want to show her some things." Echo chuckled and nodded. Of course. Once we gained control of our bodies, I turned back to Jessalyn. What was that? She asked me, confused. She looked around before her eyes landed on mine. I turned to her, completely, caressing her cheek. You look so beautiful, I told her. She grabbed my hand and kissed the back of it. I missed you, she said to me again. And I missed you, baby. I leaned down, ready to kiss her, but my phone rang, interrupting everything. Sighing, I took it out and answered. Hello. I said into the phone. Are you coming? Tank asked me. We're on our way. Remember, she still needs blood. Alias, she needs blood and meat. Uncle offered 2 animals from his field to her. He wants to see her as well. So, does your family. My family. Tank stopped talking, and then my father's voice was heard on the speaker now. What are you doing? He asked me. On my way over there with Jessalyn. I told him. I swear, the shit you put her through, she better still marry you. We're all over here at Grant's Adonis, told us what happened and we want to see her. Your mother and I guess. Hey. I held the phone closer to my ear. Don't ever think you have to do something on your own. Alias, we are family. My son, you're my firstborn. I love you as much as I love Aiden. So, does your mother. I rolled my eyes and hung up the phone. I was in no mood to hear that crappy shit at the moment. Right now, I had to get Jessalyn to Grant's. Baby, we have to go. I shouted to Jessalyn, who was no longer at my side. I heard running coming down the stairs, and Jessalyn stood there in some shorts and tank top. She had a tank top in her hand that was my size as well. Chained, Jessalyn said, throwing it at me in full speed. I caught it in my right hand and placed it on the couch. Then I began to remove the bloody shirt that I just had on. When we get there, you're going to have to hunt by. She stopped me. By myself, right? She asked me. That's fine. I tossed the shirt to the side and sighed as I threw on the tank top. Jessalyn walked over to the front door, ready to open it. Hey, wait, I said. She walked out the house and headed for the street. I took my keys from my pocket and shut the door, locking it in the process. Wait, I shouted as I rushed over to her. She stopped in the middle of the street and looked at me. I couldn't help how I was feeling. I never got to kiss her. When I pulled her close to me, she never took those addicting eyes off me. I leaned down to kiss those lips, and she turned her head. Kiss me afterwards, she told me. Jess, I haven't seen you all day, and you're trying to make me wait. She pulled out of my grasp and turned to the streets. Kiss me after we hunt, she told me. Before I could say anything else, she ran off in the blink of an eye, leaving me in the streets by myself. I chuckled, smiling from ear to ear. With a second to think, I sped off after her. I couldn't lie, though. I was loving the new her.